All right, how is it going, my magnificent sons of bitches? And I'm probably not going to be on that long, because I don't have much time on my phone. So I can't really do an extensive video, but I wanted to go ahead and do a video response of this. I'm probably not going to go ahead and get into Cenk's remedial, the whole debate that he had with Dennis Prager, because like the stuff that he said about Israel and Palestine, this stuff is kind of like generic leftist talking points. And ultimately, whenever you're looking at the Democrats as a whole, they're predominantly hypocrites on a lot of their shit. And ordinarily, it would be okay to be hypocritical on some things, on some key issues, if you had a moral compass of some sort, to a degree. If you have standards, you're going to be a hypocrite to some degree or another. But the only bad thing is, like, the Democrats don't have any real standards. Their whole thing about them, their whole niche is that they don't have any standards. So with that being said, I come across a video of Actual Justice Warrior, and basically, Actual Justice Warrior, he's usually on Dennis Prager. He's usually on PragerU, and so he's got a preconceived bias. Now everybody already understands my proclivities as it pertains to the Young Turks. So, but this doesn't always necessarily mean that they're always wrong, and in fact, there's a number of times where ordinarily I would like to agree with the Young Turks, but they can't help themselves. Even if they're right, they're going to take the wrong position on any kind of issue. So this is one of those things that the Young Turks have been talking about this. And, I hate to sit there and say it, but I've been on their channel, I've been in their comment sections, and I've kind of pushed these little buttons myself, because ordinarily I already understand exactly what is kind of occurring in this country, what I see, what I gather from various people. And, I can kind of see where it's all going. So, with that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always wrong, but they are kind of buffoonish. So, even if they are right, they can take the wrong side of a right issue. And how they do this, I don't really understand exactly how the fucking Young Turks does this. However, I felt like it was necessary because, you know, you get those people that'll be on the right side of the issue, but they have the wrong position, and then you get other people that are on the wrong side of the issue, but they're on the right position. So I kind of wanted to go ahead and give my take on this. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video, and then I'm going to go ahead and respond to it. You should be able to hear it on here. I think my phone should be able to pick this video up. So we'll go ahead and play it.
In your mouth, but it seems like you're not in favor of secularism. So I wanted to ask about that. So I never understand what you folks mean when you say we shouldn't be a secular country. Do you think religion should rule us? What do you mean?
Now, I want
to. We should have a secular.
Now, with this being said, Dennis is going to go ahead and go over what he thinks about this. But I want to go ahead and make this clear and abundantly clear, is that if you don't have Christianity in this country, if this isn't a Christian nation, then you can no longer claim the separation of church and state, because the sheer fact that you have a church and state, comes from, it's a concept based on the Christian Bible. Render that unto Caesar's, which is Caesar's, render that unto God, which is God's. The whole concept of church and state comes strictly from a Christian country. It's basically, without Christian concepts, you can't have a separation of church and state. You either get church, which is like your Holy Roman Empires, your Sharia laws, your Islamic rule, in these various countries, or you get communism and aristocracy, or you get some form of, you either get church or you get state. You don't get two forms. You don't get that balance of power in any other concept. So the sheer fact that you have a church and state is an inherently Christian concept. But we'll listen to what Prager says.
Government and a religious population, just as the founders did. That's why In God We Trust is one of the three mottos of our country.
So there are two things that I
want to point out related to this portion of the conversation, and I think they're both crucial. The first one is, of course, the lower third, the chyron that the Young Turks chose, which says secularism versus the far right's quest for religious dominance. Totally sensible framing of what's going on in this conversation, not ridiculously over the top, comically biased for any reason.
And this is why, whenever I look at the Young Turks, why I kind of roll my eyes and nobody takes them seriously anymore. This is why you can't take them seriously as a network. Ultimately, the only thing that they're good for is just basically being low-hanging fruit for everybody else here on the internet to mock and make fun of and to ridicule. You know, progressives as a whole are this. You know what I'm saying? You look at your Sam Cedars, you look at your Kyle Kalinskis. Oh, sorry. You look at your Kyle Kalinskis, you look at your TYTs, you look at your David Pacmans. They're all kind of a joke. They're all the Farron Cousins, that dude that always farts in his videos. They're all kind of a joke. And whenever you and they try to go overboard, we get it. You know what I'm saying? It's not too much different than whenever the conservatives would say, "Oh, we're fighting radical extremists in Islam," and they try to over exaggerate stuff. And the left tries it too. They're not as good as branding as everybody else is. I won't even call it a right thing. They're just not as good as branding as everybody else is. So.
And the second thing that I want to point out is the answer that you just heard from Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager thinks that our government should be secular. It should not have a religion, but he wants the population, the people, to have religious values. And since the majority of the United States now and historically, even though it is waning in recent years, is Christian, he wants the majority of the United States to be religiously Christian. He thinks a religious population with a secular government that doesn't pick between denominations is the way to go. And traditionally, throughout American history, that's basically how they function. And
now, with this being said, here's the deal. Like I said, our principles, our government, the way that we practice, the way that we understand human rights come from God, regardless. So, I mean, there has to be a starting point. That's where we get our objective morality from. So all of the due process, all of the rights, they don't come from the government. They come from God. You understand what I'm saying? So now, with that being said, I do agree that there has to be a foundation that you're going to base your laws on. So what better religion would you rather have to go ahead and base laws on? You'd rather have Christianity. Let's just be honest with you. You'd rather have Christianity than any other religion where you're going to go ahead and make a determination of what your laws are based on, what fundamental rights you have. Christianity is going to be the one that you want to go ahead and use as your basis. And that's exactly what it is. Now, should the government force you to be Christian? No, absolutely not. And this is where you get your separation of church and state. What Cenk is trying to sit there and say is that, the government is trying to go ahead and push religion on everybody. That's not what they're trying to do. But you need moral standards. Where do you get your moral standards from? You need some sort of objective morality. Where are we going to get our objective morality from? Because we can already tell by whenever you look at the White House, whenever you look at your Nancy Pelosi's, when you look at your Joe Bidens, whenever you look at all of these people that are in charge right now, they're going to go ahead and make laws according to their own best self-interest. They're not making laws in your best interest. They're going to make laws based on their own self-interest. So you need to have some sort of moral standard there. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not do a lot of these other things that would ultimately go against self-interest. Because if you stop and think about it, it would be in your own self-interest to go ahead and steal and to kill and to do all this violent stuff to go ahead and make sure you maintain dominance. But we don't do that because we have the standard. We have a standard set up on a Christian philosophy. This is why whenever you look at a lot of these other countries and whatnot, like Somalia and various other places, what was it? The one that they were trying to go into. And I know that they were making this up. I know it was a big psychological operation, but they were trying to make it seem like a big deal. And that was in Uganda. Was it Uganda that Coney 2012 or whatever the hell it was, where they were trying to make it seem like it was complete and utter anarchy? And that's ultimately what it leads into. It's, self-interest. So we have a moral standard called the Bible. And, you may not like the Bible, but, if Cenk don't like the Bible, he can always move back to Turkey if he doesn't like the Bible. I'm not here to sit there and deal with every leftist fucking microaggression there is. However, that's the standard we have in this country. You may not like that this country is majority Christian, which it is. And so that's what we need to take in consideration. If you think that, we need to go complete fucking secularism, then basically you're an advocate of communism. Is basically what you're advocating for. But that's what you're going to get. You're either going to get complete and utter fucking religion, or you're going to get complete and utter communism. One of the two. Christianity is the only faith-based religion that allows for a separation of church and state. Are we heading into a theocracy? Yeah, I can see that. I can see where Cenk would be a little bit concerned. Because the more radical the left gets with their LGBTQ stuff, with their drag queen story hours, and with their transgender pushes out there in the population is getting more and more frustrated. And this is going to, allow for them to swing more right. And that's kind of where we're going right now as a whole. But we'll go ahead and listen to some more of Actual Justice Warriors video.
He says this as somebody who is a practicing religious Jewish person. So that is what he said. Cenk asked the question. There's no point of Cenk asking the question because he's just going to put words in Dennis Prager's mouth immediately after he gives the answer. But just so you can understand Dennis Prager's position, because it's going to get completely lost by Cenk, I wanted to lay it out and restate it for you in a steelman way.
And we are now seeing the consequences in every area of life of the death of Christianity. And I say this as a religious Jew, the death of the Judeo-Christian value system, the death of the Ten Commandments, and the death of all the things that came with religion, meaning and community and moral absolutes among them. The death of religious values is why we can now say there are more than two sexes, and that we shouldn't call kids boys and girls in schools anymore. We are living in the age of moral and intellectual chaos because of the death of religion.
So again, Prager concludes his position. You guys all understand it. Everybody understands it. This is a basic conservative position that people understand across American history. They understand it right now. But you could see Cenk Uygur's anger building up as they're having this conversation, because Cenk Uygur is totally intolerant to any beliefs that aren't his own, because he's the actual fanatic in this conversation.
Now, with that being said, Dennis Prager is 110% right. Christianity is where we get the structure. It's where we get the value. It's where we get the core beliefs and the traditions, and basically how we've pretty much set up and built onto this country and established this country to where we're at right now. You know what I'm saying? It certainly wasn't fucking Cenk Uygur's secularism. That stuff didn't start to be implemented. Now, whenever we go ahead and we start trying to go ahead and say, oh, we're going to go ahead and set the new standard as evolution, we're going to go ahead and set the new standard as atheism, and if they want to go ahead and learn religion and just go ahead and teach that core belief that we all evolved from monkeys, which isn't remotely fucking true, and the fucking science doesn't add up for it, regardless of what anybody says, it's still a fucking theory, but they're going to go ahead and, teach that, theory of evolution as a universal truth. Well, now we can start to see high degrees of depression. We can start to see all this confusion, this gender dysphoria. We can go ahead and start to see how people are becoming more greedy, how they're becoming more depressed, how there's more anxiety out there, more anger, more bitterness. Less people want to, put in less effort and whatnot, and they expect more. People are more self-centered, and we can see the negative ramifications that this has, the secular side of this government and whatnot has had on society. Well, society's never going to go ahead and take anything into moderation, saying, let's go ahead and cut out the evolution thing and teach that, say, hey, it's no longer a credible science, it's an elective if you want to. No, they're going to go extremely opposite the other way, because that's just human nature, is to go to the extreme other way. They don't never really kind of migrate there to the middle. They go to the extreme, side of things, which I do think that with us going so far to the left, and with the evolution thing, and with the pushing of atheism, and with what the quality of the product that it's producing right now in this country, I mean, you can see the effects that it's had on our economy. You could sit there and see the effects that it's had on our society. Well, they're going to go the extreme the other way, and I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, Cenk and all the Young Turks already understand this. And the extreme opposite of a completely communist, secular society is a theocracy, much like the Roman Empire, where, basically you had the Inquisition and stuff. And I could see that coming back. Of course, this is all, like I said, this is all from the Bible and stuff. It's just been predicted 2,000 years ago. But we could start to see society starting to head back that way. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. But we'll go ahead and listen to Sean's video, and then see what Cenk, Prager, an actual justice warrior, will go ahead and say about this
conversation. And obviously, we're going to go off the rails immediately. But I just wanted you guys to have that 1 minute of solace, that 1 minute moment where Cenk asks a question and then Dennis Prager gives an answer in good faith before we jump off the rails.
Okay. So, poll just came out today, I think, actually. 61% of Republicans say we should be a Christian nation. But don't get them twisted. They're not saying, hey, just be Christian at home. 57% of them, of Republicans, say, no, we know it's unconstitutional. We know that
38 years ago, his back was.
It's not in the Constitution.
And to let everybody know, I have no interest in voting for Greg Abbott. Just to let you know, we just get these commercials on these YouTubers' channels now. It's one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of YouTube anymore. But we'll go ahead and go on with the video.
Can't establish a religion, but we want to do it anyway. 61% say no, we want it. So that seems to be establishing a religion, Christianity. Do you think 61% of Republicans are wrong?
So Cenk brings up these poll results, and they actually come from Politico, and I want to bring them up.
And I'll let you know that Politico right now is kind of meh, but they're a little bit more solid right now than, say, the Quinnipiac or something like that. As far as it pertains into this election, even they're starting to understand that the Democrats don't have that. They don't have those numbers. They're no longer the popular party. They've kind of lost that, which I may go ahead and do another video on about the direction that the party's essentially going to end up heading into. But we'll go ahead and listen to Sean go ahead and describe these polls real quick
for you guys to hear them, so you can understand what's actually being asked, because I think it's crucial. So if we go to the Political article, and by the way, these have the same percentages, we can break down what's actually going on with this poll. So the first question asked is if these participants believe the Constitution would even allow the United States government to declare the U.S. a quote-unquote Christian nation. And they found that 70% of Americans, including 57% of Republicans, said no, the Constitution would not allow this. Now, 43% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats, 30% of the overall respondents think that it would, and this is ridiculous. It's just not true. Congress shall make no law establishing religion, kind of the whole deal right there. But whatever. And then it says, would you favor or oppose the United States officially declaring the United States to be a Christian nation, end quote. Now, in this version of the poll, it says 62% of respondents said that they oppose such a declaration, but 62% of Republicans supported declaring the United States a Christian nation. And then it draws the conclusion, which Cenk is just quoting from verbatim. In other words, even though over half of Republicans previously said such a move would be unconstitutional, the majority of Republicans would support this declaration.
Now, here we go. First off, it doesn't matter what a poll says at all. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to declare yourself something. Stephen Rose doesn't have to declare himself to be a Houston Texans fan to be a Houston Texans fan. All he's got to do is, does he got to come out every video and say, hey, I'm Stephen Rose and I'm a Houston Texans fan? We already know you're a fucking Houston Texans fan. You don't have to make that declaration. Now, whenever you think about our Constitution, whenever you think about all the laws that have been written under, the trust that we have, the confidence of this, and, the states' rights and various other rights that we have in this country, it's all written under the concept and the trust that there is a higher power out there. And the higher power that we observe in this country is the God of the Bible, the Hebrew God, the Christian God. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the fucking day. Oh, well, I can't declare. No, you're absolutely right. The government can't sit there and say that you have to be a, Christian. That's what they do in Israel. You have to be a Jew to live in Israel. You have to be Jewish. You have to convert to Judaism to live in Israel. You don't have to do that to become a United States citizen. However, all of our laws, all of our practices, whenever you go into that court and you swear on the Bible, you swear on the Bible. You understand? Whenever you take your oath, you're swearing on the Bible. So yes, we are a Christian nation. It doesn't matter. You don't have to declare yourself a Christian nation to be a Christian nation. We are a Christian nation. And regardless, if, the fucking Democrats want to be triggered because, oh yeah, we should be declared, we are a Christian nation. It doesn't fucking matter. I don't have to declare this a Christian nation. It doesn't matter if you have a problem. It doesn't matter if it upsets you. It doesn't matter if it triggers you. One nation under God is what it says on your currency. When you start to refuse that currency because it identifies a God, then we'll go ahead and have that conversation. In fact, if it offends you that much, you can just go ahead and send the currency to me. You can send your dollar bills to me, and I'll make use of them if it offends you that much. But it doesn't matter. It's not. No, this is the concepts, the practices, all of the laws that we get is derived from a Christian faith, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't require your fucking understanding or belief of it for us to be a Christian nation or not to be a Christian nation. You don't have to be a Christian, but the sheer fact that you enjoy certain luxuries and privileges in this country is based on the understanding that our rights come from God, and that is the God of Abraham. Sorry, you're just going to have to deal with it.
Things. One, this is not a great poll, and it's not that great for what Cenk is trying to put forward. First of all, it's not great because it's not a great look for Republicans. But secondly, you can actually break down the questions. And the first one said the government declaring, and then it says the United States officially declares that we're a Christian nation. So that could explain the disparity in.
And like I said, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to declare we are a Christian nation. It doesn't matter. We are a Christian nation. That's what your laws and your basis on. Like I said, when you take an oath, whenever I took an oath, I had to swear on the Bible. Whenever I got into the military, that I would go ahead and protect and serve the Constitution of the United States. There's certain oaths, there's certain stuff. And, who are you going to swear to? Yeah, not everybody that's in the military is a Christian. But, we all take the same kind of oaths. We all, say the Pledge of Allegiance. We all do this, ceremony stuff, whatever it is. And it's all based on the God of the Bible. So, yes, the United States is a Christian nation. Like I said, regardless if you're a Christian or not, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We're still a Christian nation. And you don't have to declare that. It doesn't have to. So therein lies the issue, is that the whole damn poll was kind of rhetorical to begin with. It's kind of rhetorical at the end of the day.
What people think is constitutional versus what people would want as their preference. Secondly, the way that Cenk lays this.
And I want to go ahead and make sure that the poll doesn't say, should the United States of America demand that you become a Christian to live in this country? That's not what the poll says. The poll says, should the United States of America declare itself as a Christian country? We don't have to declare ourselves as a Christian country because we are a Christian country. And that's the way it is. Now you have all these secular people trying to go ahead and implement their little fucking laws and stuff. And the reason why they don't really too much care for our Constitution and the fact that we are a Christian country, and the reason why they can't stand people like myself, is because they want to implement laws, rules, and regulations that best benefit them. And that's the way it is. They don't want to, implement stuff. And this is why they, get in charge of these bigger cities and then they ruin those cities. You look at California, they just basically steal all those people's money. And then the Californians are tricked into thinking that it's all the fucking people that live in the red state. Oh, they're stealing our money. They're welfare states. No, they're not stealing our money. We're getting something back for our money. We're getting roads, bridges, whatever it is, our communities are growing, whatever it is. We're going to go ahead, take back the federal money that we put into the federal government, we take back and put into our own economy. They don't do that in California. California doesn't put that stuff back into their economies and whatnot. That's just what it is. So, I mean, you can go ahead and point your finger at everybody else, but yeah, we don't deal with the same kind of problems. But we'll go ahead and go on because I don't have that much battery on my phone.
Is that he essentially makes the argument that over half of Republicans know this is unconstitutional, but they're still in favor of it. However, 43% of Republicans incorrectly don't think this is unconstitutional, and that makes up the overwhelming majority, more than 2/3 of the people who are saying most likely that they would be in favor of it. So if 43% don't believe it's constitutional or don't believe it's unconstitutional, as it says in this poll, and 60-something percent, 61% are in favor of making this a law, then you could probably bet that the majority...
I mean, really, at the end of the day, how would you even make that a law? That you have to identify as a Christian? That would be hard to go ahead and make into a law, especially in this country. It'd be impossible to go ahead and make that into a law. But to sit there and say that you're going to make a law that the United States identifies itself as a Christian nation, you wouldn't have to make a law. What would be the point of making a law saying that the United States identifies itself as a Christian country? Which is ultimately what the poll says. It just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, it's kind of fucking rhetorical if you stop and think about it, because we are a Christian country. I mean, there's just nothing that you're going to be able to do about that.
Majority of those who are trying to make this the law, if you read the poll in that way, come from that 43%. So it's not like 57% of Republicans think it's unconstitutional, and a huge portion of those same percentage of Republicans are...
Yeah, like I said, once again, it's kind of rhetorical. He's going to keep on going over the poll, and like the poll has a point, and that Cenk was trying to make a point. Cenk never had a point. It was already a Christian nation. So, I mean, it's like it's beating the dead horse.
Wanted to be declared an official religion of the United States. On top of that, what you have here is something about establishing a religion through the government. That is a key word in the first portion of the poll.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this out because clearly he's having issues understanding it. Our nation poll intended to, we stated by asking if they believed the Constitution would ever, let me go ahead, allow the United States government to declare the United States a Christian nation. Why would the government have to declare the United States a Christian nation? There's no law against this. What are they going to do? Declare it a Christian nation? It's already a Christian nation. All your principles, all of the laws and stuff, they're all based on Christian concepts. You know what I'm saying? We don't make women wear a hijab to work and whatnot. You can't steal, you can't, all these are based on Christian principles. A lot of the freedoms, a lot of your constitutional rights are backed by Christian principles. The sheer fact that we have a separation of church and state in and of itself is a Christian principle. So it doesn't have to declare itself to be a Christian country for it to be a Christian country. So, I don't understand what he's trying to get at, because that's not what the poll says. The poll says, we started by asking participants if they believed the Constitution would even allow the United States government to declare the United States a Christian nation. It is a Christian nation. We found that 70% of Americans, including 57% of Republicans and 81% of Democrats, said the Constitution would not allow such a declaration. It doesn't really fucking matter. And it never says anything where the Constitution never says anything where it can or cannot declare itself. It says that you will not implement a state religion, which is entirely fucking different. That means that the state cannot run the religion, that the state cannot be like the Holy Roman Empire. You know what I'm saying? But it never says anything if the country can declare itself one said religion or another. It never says that in the Constitution. So I mean, it's people making kind of generic arguments right here, and this is what you get on the Young Turks. This is what you get. They dumb things down to the lowest common denominator to confuse people, to make people think, this is a great job. And like I said, there yet again, while I agree with Cenk to some degree on this, that people should not be forced into a religion, because it means that I would, be forced into like a more generic form of Christianity. While I would agree with him, he's just going to take the stupid position. Bringing up this poll was a waste of fucking time anyways. So,
which would obviously be more off-putting to Republicans, to then the next one, which is declaring the United States to be a Christian nation, which is not necessarily saying that we are governed by Christian law and not United States law. Now, Dennis Prager.
But we are governed by Christian law and United States law. It's the United States that found its laws and its principles on the Constitution based that there is a creator. Our rights do not come from the United States. They come from God. What God is that? That's the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. That's where, regardless of what you think, that's the laws, that's our principles, that's our concepts, that's where it comes from, is Christianity. It was a Protestant, it was a Protestant country. All the Protestants come over here. They were Christians. So, this is where your foundation of your laws come from. So our laws do not come from these elected representatives. They can't give you or take away any kind of rights. But they can't give you rights, but they can sure as fuck take them away. They can get you to go ahead and go against your own best interest. But yeah, it's already a little late for that,
Makes this point throughout, but I just wanted to lay it out to you from the poll, because Cenk kind of tries to drop this on Prager without really explaining it. And I think a solid explanation, a good foundation of what we're talking about, would be necessary and conducive for a good debate.
They didn't say they want to establish a religion. They said they wanted a Christian country. I'd rather have a Christian country than a secular country, and I'm a Jew.
Okay, so help me understand what a Christian country means. Doesn't that mean you establish a religion?
No.
You already live in a Christian country. This is a Christian country that you live in, Cenk. You understand what I'm saying? You live in a Christian country right now. You can go ahead and say, because this sure as fuck isn't a secular country. You would like it to be. Your little empty Walmart store racks and stuff like that, your worker shortages, your inflation, all that's secularism. Your Federal Reserve Act, your stimulus money and your printing out, that's all secularism, basically. But your Christianity is where you get your moral practices. That's where you get your moral laws. That's where you get your foundation for the Constitution of the United States. It's what gives you your constitutional rights. So, all those rights, like the ones that you pretend like you believe in, like your freedom of the press, your right to bear arms, all of these constitutional rights, they're ordained by God, ultimately. And that's the only way that you can go ahead and acknowledge these rights, because the government can't give you this right.
There was never an established religion in the country, and Christians aren't for it. I work with Christians. I know I work more with Christians than with Jews. My synagogue is Jews, but.
And now here is where Dennis is right. This is where Cenk goes from not understanding to Dennis being 110% right. He is right. The true Christians in this country do not believe in a centralized government-controlled religion. For religion to go ahead and take the place of government and to be a theocracy that actually goes 110% against Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Now there are those who practice Christianity who don't believe in such. The more Catholic-leaning people. Not all Catholics, because there's two prophecies dealing with the Catholics. But traditionally, like the Catholic Church, they don't believe that you should have as much autonomy. United States, true Christians, the Protestants, that's why they left. That's why they came to the United States. You know what I'm saying? That's why they just started this country over here, was to go ahead and protect a little bit of the Christian religion and whatnot. So, Yeah, the institution of Christianity absolutely doesn't believe in a theocracy, to be honest with you, because it's never benefited the Christians, at least the true Christians. You know what I'm saying? It didn't benefit the true Christians, the Protestants, during the Reformation, that's for sure, you know? And then you look in the past, whenever Nero was, sacrificing the Christians, then, whenever it's always been a government-backed religion, it's always worked against Christianity. This is why Christians do not believe in a theocracy at all, in actuality. But you get the people like TYT that'll sit there and make you think, oh yeah, the Salem witch trials, that's what Christianity's about. No, the Spanish Inquisition, that's Christianity. No, that's not really Christianity at all. It's more of a form of paganism, and it always has been. So, anyways, we'll go ahead and go on.
I work with Christians. I'm in churches all the time. I never heard one of them say, let's establish Christianity. Protestants believe deeply in the separation of church and state.
I don't see that at all, and it's not in the poll. 57% said, yeah, we know it's unconstitutional. They meet established a religion. Now you're trying to make...
That doesn't say that anywhere in the poll there, Cenk. And see, this is where you're maybe on the right side of an issue of being against a theocracy, which I don't know how much Cenk is really against a theocracy, considering that he had such a breakdown against Sam Harris whenever they were debating against Christianity versus Islam. Cenk was a little triggered during that debate because, Sam Harris said, yeah, of course, the Christian principles are better to base a country on than the Islamic principles. And so that upset Cenk quite a bit. So, it could be one of those things to where is Cenk a closet Muslim? I wouldn't be surprised. But with that being said, ultimately, that's not anything where it said that in the polls. It said, should the United States declare itself a Christian nation? It doesn't have to declare itself a Christian nation. And declaring oneself a Christian nation isn't instituting a mandate saying that you must be Christian. Like I said, I don't know one Christian who would agree in a theocracy at all. I don't know one real honest Christian. Now, there are Christians out there that do believe that, the people on the left should be more principled. But you go over there and you look at, outbreaks in California, a lot of the drug use in California, a lot of the high crime, the wildfires, and a lot of the plagues. I mean, like I said, to a degree, Democrats act almost like pestilence to their own. So, yeah. Cenk's just sitting there and being willfully ignorant.
Like the Republicans don't actually do that. So what do they mean when they say we want a Christian nation, not like the one that's in the Constitution?
So right here you have Dennis Prager explaining what he just explained earlier, which is this poll might be indicative of the fact that you have a Republican population that wants the overall population to be religious, but that doesn't necessarily mean they want to live under Christian rule. And Cenk completely misses that, so he restates it, and he states the exact fallacy that I was talking about, by saying that the same 57% that think it's unconstitutional know that they want to live without the constitutional mandate and have an official state religion, when logic would dictate that the majority of the people who...
Just because Christianity becomes, the United States declares itself as a Christian nation doesn't mean that it's going to be the state religion that the state's going to run. Now, ironically, with that being said, Cenk Uygur is all for the 501c3s. What does the 501c3s do? It implements what religions and what practices are tax exempt and what are not. This isn't just for religions, but this is also charity. So the government already gets involved in religions and stuff. They deem whether you can go ahead and accept it and what religions are going to tax and whatnot, and what sermons you're going to preach. You understand what I'm saying? So to sit there and have this, ridiculous point of, oh, should we declare ourselves a Christian nation? As because you don't mind the government getting involved in the charities and the activities of the churches at all, do you? They have to sign up for a 501c3 to be tax exempt, which, as we all know, taxation, particularly an income tax and a tax of any kind of fucking charity, is an absolute theft, is what it is. It's extortion. But they don't mind that. That's okay. So we'll
don't
go
want
on.
the U.S. to declare a Christian nation, whatever that means, which is much vaguer than the first question about whether or not the government can establish a religion, actually are the same people. I would say logically they're not, but Cenk disagrees because Cenk is trying to paint a case of extremism.
Right. I don't know the constitutional part. This is brand new to me, so I can't comment. I can only tell you that when Christians say they want a Christian nation, they want a nation that is governed by Christian moral principles and not the moral chaos that we see today. And I am a supporter of that notion.
And that's the point right there. That's what Christians really want. They want a more principled nation. You know, they don't want nation full of all of these ridiculous loopholes and ridiculous laws and, you know, people doing all this other stuff and, you know, these outrageous conditions being facilitated by the federal government somehow as a constitutional right, even though it kind of discriminates or it infringes on other people's rights and whatnot. This is what Christians have the issue with. It has no deal. They're not sitting there trying to say, well, you need to be a Christian. But we do need principles in this country. We do need a moral standard in this country if we're going to continue to live in a civilized country. And we can see right now the country is becoming more and more uncivilized, and more people are, you know, acting kind of like generic, superficial. It's just ridiculous at the end of the day.
Government means the state.
So there you have Dennis Prager laying out that what he's talking about is they want them to be governed by moral principles that come from Christianity. And Cenk says govern means the state because he doesn't understand the difference of what Dennis Prager is saying and what he's trying to paint it out to be. Cenk's trying to deliver a caricature. So let me give you a perfect example of what we're talking about. Declaration of Independence talks about how we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And the idea behind this, at least from Thomas Jefferson, is the idea that if God is perfectly free and we are created in God's image, then man is perfectly free. Another example of this is the fact that we traditionally have 12 jurors. The reason we have 12 jurors, and you can look this up for yourself, is that Jesus supposedly walked with 12 apostles. So everybody should have the right, again, God is perfectly free, man is perfectly free, to have their fate judged by 12 wise men. Obviously, that's expanded to women. But again, these are things that are carryovers from the Christian ethic that are not necessarily religious imbuement into our government, for those of you who don't understand. We also have the basic principle of self-defense, the idea that if somebody aggresses upon you, this comes from the Christian just war theory, then you can defend yourself against that aggression, and a bunch of other things that you can tie to Christianity as a philosophy, but don't necessarily mean that you have to be Catholic in the United States of America, or you have to be Protestant in the United States of America, or we're going to have the Church of England as the official church in the United States of America, which, by the way, is actually a kind of interesting thing because the Church of England is still technically the Church of the United Kingdom, but they're far less religious than the United States of America. This is one of the reasons why many religious people don't mind the secular government, because it's actually allowed the people of the United States of America to flourish religiously in a way that the old world, Europe, seems to have forgotten. So, yeah, that's the explanation of it. I know it might get a little convoluted and you might have learned a little something about where certain things in our government actually come from, but that's the basic premise of what we're talking about.
So I don't believe in Christ.
Which is exactly what I just said, basically, in a nutshell.
Just for the record, I am not a Christian.
38 years ago, his back was broken, but his spirit was not. Greg Abbott.
Okay, get rid of these commercials.
And they are not forcing, and they never did force anybody to believe in Christ. Even when they were really in power, they never forced one American to accept Christ. That's a pretty damn good record.
That's because it's not constitutional. You're making it seem like they had the option.
So then Dennis Prager makes a much more salient point, and Cenk, it completely goes over his head because he's an utter buffoon. In the United States of America, we've had way higher rates of religious participation. A huge portion of the population was not only religious, but they were overwhelmingly Christian, and it wasn't forced by law upon other people to practice those religious beliefs. That's the point that he was making. And Cenk says that's because it's unconstitutional, but in reality, a lot of the separations of church and state, the decisions that say you can't have, prayer in school and all that are relatively recent. They're products of the modern era. But overall, they just did not have this compulsion towards religiousness, even though we had a significantly more religious population. They could have easily changed the Constitution if they were so inclined, when 90 to 95% of the country was specifically some form of Christian. They didn't do that, which is a solid record, which is the point that Dennis Prager wants to make. Now, there were more religious influences on the law in the past. Prayer in school is an example of that. That's why I brought it up. But again, this really started to change once we stopped localizing education and we started bringing it up to the federal.
Now, with this being said, right, not a lot of people, whenever there was prayer in school, would even go to school. A lot of people, knew from back in the days that would, when they had strong prayer in school, didn't even go to school. They just went straight to the workplace. A lot of people worked on the ranch. Some people were homeschooled and whatnot. And, mostly they lived a cultured life. But I think that one of the key things that Cenk could have brought up and responded with, and this shows you that Cenk was just out of his elements, was the implementation of blue laws back in the days. Because back in the days, if you had a business and whatnot, you could not be open on Sundays unless you were like a critical, like if you worked in, medical or something like that, or you worked in law enforcement, or military or whatever thing. You ultimately you couldn't be open on Sundays. So the implementation of blue laws is one of those things to where actually at some point in time, when we were what you would say, what Sean would say here, 95% Christian, they absolutely had laws back then that required, basically rest on the Sabbath day. You're starting to see this come around and see whenever Cenk Uygur, if he wanted to make a solid point, he would have said they're bringing this back in Poland right now. Because right now in Poland, if you have a business, your business has to be closed on Sunday because they shut down for the Sabbath in Poland. It's, the same reason why, you have certain restaurants here in this country. I think like Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's already a process setting up for it to become that way again, to be honest with you. But this is something that Cenk doesn't even think to go ahead and add as an argument at all. And Sean kind of skips over it. He goes to the prayer in school and that this is a big deal. But I mean, whenever you look at the secular side and you look at the, atheist side, they have their own little philosophies and religions. And, it could easily be, construed to think that climate change is somewhat of a religion.
Because originally,
it's their version of Armageddon. You know what I'm saying?
These constitutional protections were only really.
Or I won't say Armageddon, but the apocalypse. It's their little inception of revelations. Basically, is climate change. So they have their own little, philosophies and pandemics and like the COVID is basically like their own little plagues and stuff that they implement into their own superstitions at this point.
Applicable to the federal government. That's why the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, and the 14th Amendment incorporation cases and that whole realm of law really came post-Civil War. But, whatever, why even focus on the history? Let's just babble incoherently and get angry and have Cenk make dumb points. Why even go into the constitutional history of the United States of America and American jurisprudence?
So I want to ask.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
You just said if they have power, you're afraid, correct?
Well, first of all, no, he didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. But Dennis, yeah, I'm worried that your dear leader, Donald Trump, doesn't believe in democracy. He's going to, he said you had a system to put in fake electors. Now you've got 61% of Republicans say, screw it, let's just be a Christian nation. Let's just stop basically and be run by a Christian mullah. Okay, and so you think Trump would say, I'm that mullah and we're not having democracy? He'd do that in a second. You think that he cares about the rest of us? Lifelong con man who only cares about his own power and wealth. If you can't see that, Dennis, you're being purposely blind.
So here you have Cenk Uygur babbling uncontrollably and being totally nonsensical and talking about Donald Trump, but not only Donald Trump as a dictator, which is a bit of a stretch in my opinion, but Donald Trump as a Christian mullah. Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States of America, is somehow going to declare himself, according to Cenk, and this is something that Trump would reasonably do, a Christian mullah. Now, I know Donald Trump says he's a Christian. I know Donald Trump says he's religious and all of that. But Donald Trump also has a record of cheating on every wife that he had, hooking up with porn stars. And one of my favorite moments of the Republican primary campaign with Donald Trump is the fact that he brought out a Bible that his mom gave to him. But during him telling the story of this Bible, he talked about basically getting it out of storage because obviously he wasn't reading the Bible. If you don't believe that Donald Trump is probably the least religious Republican president, maybe the least religious president we've ever had, maybe there's some that are just not really that religious, that are actually secret atheists or whatever, but publicly the least religious president that we've ever had, then you're not paying attention. This guy does not want to establish Christian mullihness or anything like that.
Now, with that being said, with all the philandering that Donald Trump did, you can compare him much with Judah and a lot of other people that are in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? That had these same kind of urges, I guess you could say. We see it quite a bit, and it's a reoccurring theme. God uses various people. I think I've heard a lot of people, Trey Smith, actually compare Donald Trump to Cyrus the Great. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, in the way that the Persians fixed up Babylon after they went ahead and conquered the Babylonians and whatnot, and a lot of people, like, you take a look at what he did in, establishing Jerusalem as the capital and the main headquarters for the embassy in Israel. So, clearly, Cenk isn't too far off. Now, this is where actual justice warrior is wrong. He says, "Oh well, Donald Trump is the least," and yeah, I could sit there and say that he doesn't have a history of the best morality out there. It doesn't mean that the man can't be religious, and in fact, actually, in all actuality, Donald Trump is actually a Jesuit. You know what I'm saying? But it wouldn't really matter at the end of the day. Cenk still wouldn't have a point because you want to know who's a Catholic? Nancy Pelosi is a Catholic. Joe Biden is a Catholic. So, I mean, any one of these could go ahead and establish this, a Christian nation. We see that, as far as like abortion and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff got, that whole thing of overturning Roe v. Wade, that wasn't accomplished under Trump. That was accomplished under Joe Biden. You see what I'm saying? And Nancy Pelosi. And do you think that at the end of the day that Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, or even Kamala Harris for that matter, you think that they're going to fight for, ultimately it benefits them? No, they're not going to fight to go ahead and reinstitute Roe v. Wade. That's gone. You know what I'm saying? They're Catholic. Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden are Catholic. So what makes you think that they're going to sit there and say, yeah, we need to go ahead? No, absolutely not. It goes against their dogma. You know what I'm saying? It goes against their moral beliefs. So, yeah, it is what it is. And Trump is, like I said, Trump's a Jesuit. He's going to go along with them. It's an extension of the Catholic Church. He's going to have the same kind of views. So we'll go ahead and listen.
His favorite kid is Ivanka Trump, who converted to Judaism to marry Jared Kushner. If you think Donald Trump is a religious supremacist, you're insane. And Cenk, I got news for you. You just said that you believe that, and you are in fact insane.
The man was president for 4 years. He was far more open than Joe Biden and the Democrats are, who are using the FBI to suppress dissent and who are using the New York Times and CNN. This is the least free America has been in its history in terms of free speech and freedom of dissent. And it's because of the Democrats and the left.
So Dennis makes the point that the Democrats in power right now are far more intolerant to dissent, are far more authoritarian than the Donald Trump administration ever was. And this is just provably true. Look at what's going on in social media.
And he's absolutely 110% right in this situation as well. Because just because it goes secular doesn't mean that it's going to give you freedom. And in fact, a secular government can't give you a freedom. All it can do is take those freedoms away. That's all a secular government can do.
And by the way, this isn't something that I'm just alleging. This isn't something that I'm just asserting. We have official statements from the White House about how these social media companies need to crack down on quote unquote misinformation. We had that lawsuit where the doctor sued Twitter based on a breach of contract, and he discovered through the discovery process that Twitter was actually specifically asked to ban him from the platform based on recommendations from people within the Biden White House. So, yes, this is exactly what they're doing. On top of that, you have the FBI investigating or putting out letters to investigate parents that show up to school boards who are unhappy about what's being taught in their K through 12 education, and all these other ways that the Biden administration is using both soft and hard power against political opposition. These are just facts. Anybody can look them up. Anybody can see them. It is quite troubling. It is quite treacherous. And the idea that you can lose access to your payment processors, your social media companies, your means of income, specifically due to the fact that the Biden administration doesn't like what you're doing, it should be troubling to all Americans. This is essentially an accelerated portion of Obama's Operation Choke Point, which, for those of you who don't remember, was an operation where they threatened financial institutions that did business with supposedly criminal actors, and that caused them to drop the accounts of those people. Now, you might say, no big deal if we're talking about drug dealers or whatever, but in reality, the way that this took effect is that a lot of legal, federally licensed firearm dealers would lose access to their financial information due to the fact that Obama was trying to do an end around the Second Amendment. So this was a real thing that happened. And by the way, it wasn't just firearms people. It happened to people in adult industries. Again, anybody could look it up. I'm not making it up. It's all out there in the public. And Biden is doing this, but he's not even doing it as formally as Obama. So we can't even get the same oversight and the same ability to challenge based on the people in these industries. So yes, this is a problem, but watch Anna Kasparian jump in to bail out Cenk by bringing up something irrelevant.
Obama had taken classified documents from the White House home with him. And if the federal government...
And see, here's where Anna goes off the fucking rails, where she's like, oh, he took federal documents home with him, which, you know, if you're a president of the United States, you can unclassify. And like I said, this is how many times have they tried to impeach Trump and run with this because they can't get any honest views? They're not going to do any honest journalism. They're not going to make any legitimate arguments. They're not going to put any effort in. And this is where we get to the point of where TYT is right now, today, being nothing more than a laughingstock. Ultimately, whenever you look at the traffic here on YouTube, whenever you go ahead and look at the trends on Twitter, whenever you go ahead and look at the traffic on Facebook, you know, we could see that these big tech companies don't have the confidence. And this is the issue that they're going to end up ultimately running into, slamming into head first, is the fact that, and this is why I know that, you know, it has to worry these Cenk Uygurs and these Anna Kasparians of the world of, is there a potential that we could become a theocracy? Yeah, there's a very real potential that we could become a theocracy. I'm not denying that. You know what I'm saying? As a Christian, I'm not denying that. But it's going to be because of the practices of your secular government. You just heard Sean sit there and talk about Operation Choke Point, various other operations. You can go ahead and look at the counter-propaganda acts and the, Smith-Mundt Modernization Acts and stuff that the, you know, government has used to try and control the masses. And ultimately, you're living in the apocalypse. You know what I'm saying? You're living in the unveiling. And a lot of this stuff is just coming out to light. And, you know, whenever you're talking about an information board, those who give out the most accurate information are going to be the ones that are going to be more effective. So, and the ones that are giving out more accurate information are those ones who practice in religion and whatnot. And so they're going to be the ones that are going to be looked at with more confidence and more trustworthiness. So we could start to see this being a turning point here in this country. And could it lead into becoming a more, more of a, it'll be a slow burn. But I could start to see the United States gradually starting to go ahead and start to become that theocracy that, ultimately every empire becomes. Because every major empire, because I don't consider like communist Russia and communist China a major empire. You know what I'm saying? They're barely able to keep the lights on. And, you know, now that Russia has, dropped communism and they've kind of become more free and they seem to be more open to more Christian standards than, they were when they were communist. But every major empire, like the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, every major world superpower, even the Egyptians, they understood that spiritual authority backs up temporal authority, not the other way around. So, I mean, this is ultimately, like I said, all your principles, everything's already based, all the concepts are there for the rise of another Roman Empire, basically, Holy Roman Empire. So, yeah, I figured I'd go ahead and respond to this. And like I said, the rest of this video, they get into Israel, and then they get into a lot of the other TYT hypocrisies that they have. Israel versus the Palestinians, and then they're going to sit there and make themselves look redundant. Like I said, whenever Dennis Prager went on TYT, he didn't really have to do a lot. He just, all he has to do, and this is what ultimately I found out in my time here on the internet, is just give the Democrats a platform and they'll consume themselves. It seems to be, the running philosophy here anymore. And that's ultimately what Dennis Prager did. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I just wanted to kind of go ahead and have this out there on the internet. Cenk Uygur is not necessarily wrong, but like I said, he goes about everything the wrong way. Even if he takes the right position, he's gonna, do it in the wrong way. And actual justice warrior may be wrong, but he's gonna, do it in a more right way. He's gonna be wrong in a more of a right way, and more of a positive way, where Cenk is always gonna be right in a negative way. So yeah, it's a fucking conundrum, is what it is. And the sheer fact that we can start to see that the migration from the left, people are becoming less trustworthy of the federal government and of these bureaucracies that passed a lot of these legislations, ultimately to screw over the American people. Whenever that Inflation Reduction Act goes ahead and kicks in, after the insurmountable inflation that the Democrats, the 117th and the 116th, and before that the 111th and the 110th Congresses have implemented to go ahead and, cause this massive inflation and this, massive debt that we're under right now. Once that Inflation Reduction Act, then we're really probably going to be in some trouble. And then I can totally suspect that once that Inflation Reduction Act honestly starts to hit, you're going to see a lot of people ultimately make that turn back to these institutions. Who's going to be there? And it's going to be the religious institutions and whatnot that are going to be seen as more favorable by those people that are, hungry and in need, because they're going to be in the people, the Christian faith, they're going to be in the people. So I could totally start to see the United States starting to head back into that more of a Christian principle theocracy type of mindset. The more the federal government and the more that these leftists and the more that Hollywood and DC, they've kind of already dropped the ball. You can already start to see more principled actors in the Democrat Party, like Tulsi Gabbard, already starting to abandon the party. And whenever you look at Tulsi Gabbard, she was an XO. I'm assuming that she was probably an XO of a civil relations and psychological operations brigade in California. So we can already start to see, even from that perspective, that they're starting to lose the confidence and the trust, and they're just, you're just not going to be able to push these leftist concepts like you used to anymore all over the media and stuff. You have too many independents out there. You have too many people out there trying to come out, produce content, trying to go out there and give a different perspective. And whenever your whole media industry and whenever all of these left alienate anybody with any other kind of different alternatives out there, different ideologies, trying different principles and stuff, and alienating everybody, then yeah, well, you know, you can understand why a person like Tulsi Gabbard, who would probably be more intelligent than like a Cenk or an Anna Kasparian or a Joe Biden or even a Nancy Pelosi or a Hillary Clinton for that matter, who have been in this little chamber of having all this power. Well, we could sit there and see that she's jumping off. And yeah, this could be a turning point in the United States as we know it. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. You people tell me what you think. You like, sub, do the shit YouTube and Facebook tell me to do to get over. And for now, I'm out.